Welcome to Annette on Life, Liberty, and Happiness, a podcast where we talk about the Constitution, politics, history, and pretty much anything else I want to talk about. I am Annette Bybee. All right. Oh, and just so you know, YouTube had banned me for a week, and so I'm hoping this one will stay up. I don't believe there's going to be anything that YouTube would have a problem with. However, I cannot be a truly honest and effective political commentator if I can't say what I want to say. So I am going to be slowly but surely moving over to Rumble. So if you could go to Rumble, type in Annette Talks and you'll find me there, and follow me on Rumble. And my goal is to move everybody from YouTube to Rumble. If you're listening on a podcast platform, that should stay the same. So if you're Spotify, iHeartRadio, or any of those places, Apple Podcasts, just stay there. All right. But if you want to see me, go to Rumble and Annette Talks. All right, so today I wanted to address a few things. Oh, also, for those of you that are my Facebook friends, you know that I'm going to have a radio show pretty soon, which is very exciting. It's going to be here in the Denver area, AM 560. I don't know the day or time yet, so I will let you know, but I'll be on the radio 1 hour a week. Yay! And I'm assuming, I know it'll be on Amazon Music, so you'll be able to access it by telling Alexa to play it. But I don't know more than that yet. I will let you know when I know more. So my podcast is probably going to change a little bit because I'm going to be doing the radio show every week as well. So I'm not sure what all changes are going to happen yet, but I'm just guessing the podcast is going to be a little shorter and probably fewer interviews because I'm going to do those on the radio. Anyway. All right, so let's get to it. There's a lot going on this week. But what I want to talk about is, first of all, we got an email for those of you that belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, like I do. We got an email from our prophet, who is also the president of the church, asking us to get vaccinated, take the COVID vaccine, and wear masks where you can't social distance. And so a lot of people, understandably, were very upset about this because a lot of us don't want to get the vaccine for various reasons, and we don't trust the government. And so we didn't like the way the email worded it. I think it said something about wise, trusted government and medical leaders, something to that effect. And a lot of us are like, no, we don't trust the government or, Fauci or any of these other people. So I just wanted to give my quick take on this. I did a lot of thinking about it, praying about it, meditating on it. And then I read an article yesterday on ldsmag.org. And he said some of the same things that I kind of came to this conclusion of. We reached the same conclusion on a few areas. Anyway, I decided, and this is obviously just my personal take on it, and this is the same thing, the same conclusion I reached when we were first locked down and the church was not pushing back on restrictions on worship. And even though it was obvious that we were being told to do things, we ordered to do things that were blatant violations of the First Amendment, free exercise clause. And the conclusion was then, and it is now, that the church has decided that this is not the hill that it's going to die on. That right now the important thing is that we continue to gather Zion, or gather Israel, meaning we have lots of missionary work to do on both sides of the veil, and that work needs to go forward. And it can't if the church doesn't keep its head down. And if it doesn't keep its head down, we're likely to be more restricted, especially in other countries. This is an international church. I know it's easy to forget that and just focus on what's going on in the United States, but it is an international church. And so there are many saints in other countries that are already being told they can't go to church if they don't have the vaccine, and just being persecuted. And I believe, this is my personal belief, that the church knows that we will be persecuted if we don't just go along to get along on this issue. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a right thing. It feels like a lesser law to me. But it also seems to me that the greater law is to gather Israel. As we're getting closer to the second coming, we're in the last days. We've got to gather Israel. That's the number one most important thing we can do. And we cannot do that if we're locked down or being persecuted. That's my take. You could completely disagree with that. That's fine. I personally have still not decided on the vaccine. I'm still thinking it through. I'm still trying to decide what to do. But that's my take. Anyway, if you want to disagree or post or whatever, you can post in the comments on YouTube, assuming this is on YouTube, or on Rumble, or on my Facebook page. You can find me. My name on Facebook is Annette Mashler Bybee. You can follow me there or send me a friend request and let me know what you think. Or you can email me at annette@annettetalks.com. Anyway, that leads me into the other topic that I wanted to discuss today. And that it kind of relates to what I just told you. But I recently read an article from Mises, I think that's how you pronounce it, MISES.org, and it's a libertarian think tank. And this article, which I'll link to in the show notes, I think it's called, We're in the Middle of a Long War with the State. And basically the article says that, the state is a construct of the last 300 or 400 years. And so this is not something that we've always lived with. And so it first, defines the state. I won't go into all these terms and everything, but the gist of it is that before the state or the federal government, which was all powerful, we had people in medieval Europe doing their own thing. Well, I'll read to you a little bit of what it says. Prior to the rise of the state and notions of patriotism and national identity, the medieval Europeans were much more pragmatic in their view of government power. The prince or king existed to address problems in emergencies. Moreover, he and the many other lords, dukes, and other members of the warrior class existed to be arbitrators in disputes and to exact retribution from wrongdoers. Naturally, this sort of work required violence, and these groups used coercive means in their work. But these groups were not strong enough to claim sovereignty or a true monopoly on the means of coercion, and each prince had to compete with other princes. Indeed, kings were, in the words of Hendrik Sprite, I think that's how it's pronounced, just a first among equal princes within their realms. Political units tended to be very small. Moreover, as described by Sprite, human beings were in the West subject to overlapping legal claims. People could be vassals of more than one prince. This meant an attempt to tax a city, a bishopric, an individual local lord could encounter stiff resistance from the church, from a city council, or from another prince. Sprite writes, one could simultaneously be the vassal of the German emperor, the French king, and various counts and bishops, none of whom necessarily had precedence over the other. A vassal might recognize different superiors under different circumstances. In effect, this meant that various competing powers sought consensus, negotiation, and other means of dispute resolution other than simply calling upon a sovereign to impose his will through the power of physical force. So the point is there was no strong central government, and so there was nobody that could come in and tax you and tell you what to do, because there were just these kings and princes who would come in and deal with emergencies or arbitrate problems, disputes. So he goes on to talk about what all of that means. And then what was really interesting to me and what I wanted to talk about before I go back, I hate the expression circle back because it's been ruined by Jen Psaki, as Glenn Beck likes to call her. But I'll come back to what I started this podcast episode with. And so what he goes on to talk about at the end of this article is he says he thinks the solution to basically disconnecting from the state, because the state is the problem now, right? We see what's going on with the federal government. I mean, we have a president right now that's outright said he couldn't find a legal justification for ending, for continuing the rent moratorium, and yet he's going to do it anyway. So we have a government that's completely disconnected from rule of law when it comes to the Constitution. And so obviously this cannot last long. I also think that with all the out of control spending, this cannot last long. So what he says is you need secession. And so, maybe different states secede, maybe they group up into different groups of states that loose sort of confederacies. I don't know. There's also been, the idea that at some point there might be a large congregation moving to Missouri or, other places. I don't know what it's going to look like, but my guess is at some point the central government will fall. And so we will need something else to back us up. And what he says is if you have secession, you need to build up other institutions. And he names 3. And I thought this was interesting: church, family, and local government. So what I said at the beginning about the church and what they're doing, keeping their head down, relates back to what I'm saying now. If we are going to lose our central government for whatever reason, whether through secession or through, it just falling apart because we're drowned by debt. Either way, I think there's a good possibility we do not end up with a strong central government. And so we need those institutions. We need the church to be strong, which I believe is why the church is telling us to get along, to keep our heads down so we can get stronger. We can build on the church and not take a lot of body blows right now. Eventually, we probably will. We know we're going to be persecuted, so we will take body blows at some point, but this is not that time. So then, of course, we need the family. And we know that the church teaches us to strengthen our families. So we need to strengthen our church, and we strengthen our family and local government. And so the third one to me means that you find out who your mayor is, if you have county commissioners, who they are. I know who my county commissioners are, and luckily they are on the side of freedom. You should find out who your local sheriff is. But we need to make strong ties with our local government because they are the ones that will be upholding the Constitution, which brings me to another thought. A lot of us have said that we know the prophecy that the Constitution will hang by a thread, and that the priesthood, and I think not just men, I think women as well, will save the Constitution. So that got me thinking along the lines with this whole idea of building up these institutions and maybe, segregating or separating off into these different confederacies or individual states or whatever happens. Maybe we'll tribe up again, maybe we'll break it into tribes. Who knows? But isn't it possible that the Constitution will be the basis for the rule of law for these little confederacies or tribes or whatever they are? Isn't it entirely possible that we will take that constitutional, at least the constitutional principles, and apply them to whatever kind of law that or governance that we have with those confederacies or those individual states? I mean, each state right now has a state constitution. Why would we not use the same principles? And so could that be the way the Constitution is saved? Just a thought. So those are my thoughts for today. I would like you to really think about how can we strengthen the church, strengthen the family, and have stronger ties to local government. And also, you might think about what can you do in your community. We need to work closer to home, not worry about the federal government, maybe not even the state government. It could get down as small as county and city. What can you do? Can you run for office? Can you back up your county commissioners? I need to send an email to my county commissioners today and tell them how much I appreciate them standing up for freedom. We have stuff going on right now where the schools are getting ready to mask up again. Well, there are a lot of people who are not okay with that. It's one thing for us to voluntarily go along with something that the church asks us to do, and a completely different thing to have the government mandating it. The government mandates take away our agency. I mean, obviously we still have a choice. We could walk in without a mask or do something else, but it limits what we can do within the law. And that is completely different than, you know what, I want to keep the church strong, I'm going to mask up, or I'm going to get the vaccine or whatever. That's totally different. So I am going to be standing up for freedom of choice from government regulation. And then I'll make my own decision when it comes to what the church has asked me to do, because that's always voluntary. I'm not going to go to jail if I don't wear a mask to church. I may go to jail if I don't wear a mask in a public place with a mandate, or my kids may get kicked out of school. I mean, there are different consequences when a church asks you to do something and the law tells you to do something. So that brings me to the last point I want to make today. That even if the church is going along to get along and they're saying, we obey the laws of the land, which of course we do. But even if the church is saying, please do these things, that's the church as an organization. That is not individual members. I say individual members have a mandate to continue to stand up for religious freedom and freedom of every type. So try and keep those things separate in your mind. The church as an organization is going to do something, but you as an individual can do something else. That doesn't mean you're going to go against the church. That means that you acknowledge what the church is doing and you say, I may voluntarily go along with your requests. But as an individual, I'm going to still stay out there fighting for religious liberty and individual liberty. And we've been told by the church, Elder Bednar last year during COVID, or still COVID, during 2020, Elder Bednar talked about how we need to continue to fight for religious freedom because it was taken away when it shouldn't have been. So just because we decide to go along with what the church asks us to do voluntarily does not mean that we do not continue to fight for the right to do what we want to do when it comes to our government. And that's my soapbox for today. So again, please go to Rumble, find Annette Talks, and follow me there. I'm going to start posting things at probably both YouTube and Rumble for a while. I know that YouTube's going to ban me again. I have something ready to post next week that they will probably not pass muster. So if you want to keep hearing me, if you want to keep seeing me on video and my guests on video, go to Rumble, follow me, and stay tuned to find out about the radio show on AM 560. So I appreciate you. Thank you for listening to Annette on Life, Liberty, and Happiness, where freedom lovers gather.